When Earl returned to Brandinaborg, his wife and his daughter, the maiden Isolde, came out to meet him, and they welcomed him warmly and became very happy. He took Isolde by the hand and led her before the knight Vandilmar and said that he wishes to give him this gift. And Vandilmar thanked the Earl warmly. After that, the wedding was prepared, and he married Isolde, the Earl's daughter. Thus, Earl rewarded Vandilmar, because he had caught the great bison through his action. Vandilmar was one of the Earl's counts after that. And when some time had passed, the Earl spoke to his hunters and named Nordian. Do you remember how many young bison there were in the Ungara forest? It would be good to fell them just as we did the old one. And Nordian called out that he was ready. And the Earl wanted to leave immediately. Isolde heard this and wept sorely, and went to the Earl and implored him again, as she had before, not to go on this hunt. And the Earl was determined to go as he had planned. Isolde said that she had dreamt a dream, so that she knew for certain that the Earl would receive great misfortune from the enormous animal he had killed. And the Earl said that he would ride into his forest and hunt, and he would travel no further. He swore this to her by his word. And this made Isolde happier, and she let him go. The Earl rode out now with 12 of his knights and with his dogs, and they took 3 days to reach the Ungara forest. He rode into the forest in the evening and saw there many large fires. We must now tell about King Salomon. He found out that Earl had killed his great bison and spoiled all of his best animals and done great harm in his country. And when he heard this news, he called out to his knights and bade them arm themselves, and said that he would now avenge himself on Earl and on Apollonius, his brother. So King Salomon prepared himself quickly, and he had 500 well-armed knights with him. He rode his way until he arrived at the Ungara forest one evening, and he set up his tents here. Later in the evening, the king himself rode out of the forest and intended to burn the house of Earl Apollonius that night. Earl had come into the forest and was riding towards them. When the Earl and his men saw a large army riding toward him, the knights fled into the forest, but Earl was such a valiant man that he would rather die than flee, and his good friend Nordian would not flee from him. King Salomon caught Earl and had both of them bound. King Salomon then turned back to his men. After that, he returned to his kingdom, and he took Earl with him. He had him cast into a dungeon, and Vandilmar, his son-in-law, returned home with the knights who were left, and told Isolde what had happened. and there was a great grief in the land, because the Earl had been captured. When Earl Iron had lain 3 nights in the dungeon, the man who guarded him came and brought him food. Earl Iron asked the man if he would bear a message to King Salomon, and the man said that he would tell the king what the Earl wished. And the Earl said that he should ask the king to come speak with me the next day. And the man did as the Earl had bidden. He told the king that the Earl wished to speak with him. The king went to the tower where the Earl was kept and asked what the Earl wanted from him and why he had sent him word. The Earl said that he would ask him a boon if he would offer it, and that boon would be to let Nordian out. He said that he would send Nordian home to Brandinaborg with his knights and a message. And the king said that the Earl was not worthy of such a boon, but that he would grant it anyway. When Nordian was freed and provided with a horse, he had the mission of riding to Brandinaborg with the Earl's message. He was to give Isolde his greeting and to ask that she collect all the money and treasure she could find in his country, and to offer it as ransom for the Earl. Nordian rode his way until he came into the Ungara forest. There he met Earl Apollonius and his knights armed to the teeth. They intended to ride into Frankland after his brother with an army. When Nordian joined the army, Earl Apollonius was very sick with a high fever, and a few days later he died from this illness. The army stopped, and since they had no chieftain, they went home. He rode on to Brandinaborg and told Isolde his message and showed her Earl Iron's letter. Lady Isolde greeted him well and said that she would certainly not delay ransoming Earl Iron if there was any way to do so. And she sent word into all of her country and laid a tax on every man, both young and old. And she collected so much money that she had a wagon loaded with gold and silver and good treasures. And she now traveled to meet King Attila and told him what had happened and asked him to support her. He answered, saying that he would not at first support her with money, but rather that he would send a letter to King Salomon, asking that he comply with Lady Isolde's request to let Earl Iron go free. He could ask this because King Salomon was his friend. King Antiochus, the father of King Salomon, had fostered King Attila from his childhood on, and King Salomon and King Attila had great affection for one another. For this reason, King Salomon had never harried in Earl Iron's lands or in the lands of Earl Apollonius, his brother, because these lands belonged to King Attila's kingdom, even though the earls were custodians. Isolde continued on her way until she came to Frankland and to the castle of King Salomon. She was well received there, and the king seated her next to his queen. The first evening, after Isolde came to King Salomon's castle, she showed him the letter from King Attila, and stood up from her seat and bowed before him, saying, "Good sir, King Salomon, I have come a long way to meet with you with great grief, but also with much gold and silver, and purple, fine cloth, good horses, and good armor, and many kinds of courteous riches. We have brought all of this into your land and into your power. Hear me now, sir, and grant me a boon I ask of you. Let my lord, Earl out, and take all of this money and all of these things we have brought into your country." And King Salomon answered, "You are certainly a courteous lady. Return home to your country and take all of this gold and treasure with you. But Earl has done such damage in my country, done me so much dishonor, that he will have to pay for it, and I can scarcely let him out immediately and let him ride away." King Salomon's queen stood up and went to him and put both of her arms around his neck and kissed him and said, "My dear lord, Lady Isolde has generously come to us. She stands now before your knees weeping and does not receive your boon. Grant this boon to me and to her. Think also of the message from your dearest friend, King Attila." And King Salomon spoke to his knights and told them to go out to the tower and to take the Earl out and to bring him to him. And the knights did so. And once again, all it took was a lady's social skills and power as a noblewoman to get what she wants. And so we'll continue with the feast in Frittila, the message to Bolfriana, and the discovery of a secret in the 48th episode of the Thidrekssaga, called The Secret of Dusk. So thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here in the Hall of Sagenheim.